can take to be more sustainable and to, more importantly, I feel, because one or 10 people, recycling and things like that, it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's good and everyone should be doing it. But until you change the system that is producing all this waste, you're really just trying to hold back a flood with your hands. It's not going to have the major kind of effect that is needed to really, really make a difference. But even doing those things provides an example to people, and it gets people oriented in that direction, thinking in that way, thinking in terms of sustainability and preservation, and designing things to last, and designing things so that the pieces, when they're done, can be used for something else rather than thrown into the garbage. Just all of these ideas that are just so logical and so based in sustainability that people don't often think about. So I think getting people to think about those things is really the hardest and most important part, because once people are on board with that's what they want, then they're going to find a way to do it. Once people want to move into this kind of a society, there's going to be ideas for how to do it coming left and right. But first people have to know about it, and they have to understand that it's possible and feasible, and they have to want to move in that direction. That's, for me, is the most important part. Yeah, but I do too like, Oscar's video that you mentioned. I just wanted to give a shout out to that again, because I think the way he presented it is really awesome, and it's a great framework for thinking of how this transition could come about.
Absolutely. I mean, alluding to what you said a moment ago, it's encapsulated by the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. If we, as long as we, want to move in that direction, then we will, figure it out. And, but it is very, very difficult and nigh on impossible to figure out a way to do that from where we are right at this very moment in time. I mean, there was a discussion I was having on a forum once, and I actually came up with quite a good analogy to express how difficult it is, because they were asking for a transition plan. And I was trying to illustrate how creating a transition plan is nigh on impossible. I basically made the example that, say, for example, creating a transition plan is like trying to make your way through an assault course that is the size of a football field. However, this assault course is constantly changing all the time. You can only see about 1 meter in front of you, like a couple of yards in front of you, and you're on a time limit as well. And you keep hearing these voices from different parts trying to distract you. That is how difficult it is to create a transition plan between where we are right now to, say, for example, a resource-based economic model. And they didn't have anything to argue against that.
Yeah, definitely. It's, it's impossible, like I said, to lay it out step by step. It's silly to even want that, as much as I can understand how that's the automatic reaction. Well, how do we get there? It's like, well, we don't know. But it is hard to imagine an exact transition. But again, it's only hard to imagine an exact transition with people being as they are now. If we had a society full of people like you and me, or anyone else who's an active member of the Zeitgeist movement, I can imagine a million ways that we would make this transition. It doesn't seem difficult at all. The difficulty is convincing people and getting people to understand or to push for this.
So with that sort of thing in mind, when we've discussed how your mind reacted to and responded to the train of thought. How would you say your friends and family responded to your change of worldview?
The thing is, I wouldn't say that they don't know, but I don't make it a big issue with my family, especially. I've basically given them the rundown. I've given them the DVDs, said, hey, you should watch these. This is something I'm involved with and like a group that I'm, doing stuff for. But I haven't sat there and tried to debate them on the issues. I actually, to be honest, I'm not even sure what my parents think about all of this. It almost just seems easier to leave that part of it out of the conversation with them. Because we've never really been a family to discuss issues like this. We just sort of, have dinner together and talk about what's going on in our lives and things like that. It almost seemed like it would be so out of place for me to start bringing up all of these kind of very big, very socially conscious concepts. And I haven't felt really the need to do that. I've let them know that it's something I'm into. I've said, hey, you should check this out. And I kind of left it in their field to go do it, which is the same tact I kind of take with anyone that you meet on the street or we hand a DVD to. It's like, hey, check out this information. If you like it, come back. If not, fine. I'm going to deal with people who are interested first and foremost, and not try to force anyone to listen to what I'm saying. I've also had a kind of a fear of coming across as some sort of zealot for some idea, so I don't want to. I don't want to be that. My friends, it's a little bit different because they kind of are more on my same wavelength, my same. Like I said, I watched the first Zeitgeist movie, the last out of all my friends. They were telling me, oh, you have to watch this movie. And I mean, some of them are very much in support. They're just like, oh yeah, that sounds good. I mean, but they're not to the point where they're gonna go and be an activist for it, which is fine because not everybody is. Just having someone say, oh yeah, I mean, if things start moving in that direction, I'm totally for it and I'm down. Like, that's all you can ask of most people, I feel. I don't feel it's fair to think everyone's gonna be an activist. All you want is supporters. I think that's something I've kind of learned from the Vancouver chapter, because when we were in Edmonton, our focus was always on how do we get more members? How do we get more members into our group? How do we get more people involved with Zeitgeist Edmonton? And when I came to Vancouver, the attitude to that was completely different. They were like, oh no, we have enough members. We have 5 or 6 good people who come every week and they hand out DVDs and talk to people. And if someone's interested, they're going to involve themselves. We're not here to try and make people get involved. We're here to get this information out to as many people as possible. And people come by the booth all the time and say, oh, hey, I'm so glad you guys are out here doing what you're doing. They'll throw a few dollars in our donation box and say, yeah, use this, buy more DVDs, buy stuff. Keep doing what you're doing. I love it. And that's it. That's the extent of their support. But they still do support it. And that's awesome. That's what we need. We need people out there who, even if not actively pushing for it in the same way we do, are on board with the train of thought and who agree with it. I think that's the most important thing. Because, again, like I said, once people agree with this, transitioning is going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one thing that just now I've sort of realized to myself that might be part of a misunderstanding that some people have, where you illustrated the difference between the orientation of communication between the Edmonton chapter and the Vancouver chapter, that some people can have that misunderstanding that when you're advocating the information purely to recruit for a chapter, that's a different thing to communicating information to basically just simply spread the word. And some people can have the misunderstanding that, they see people actively trying to recruit for the chapter as our method to try and spread information. And it's just sort of clicked in my mind just now that some people might have that misunderstanding that essentially we're just trying to recruit like any other cult would. And that may be part of the basis for a lot of people's accusations of us being a cult, because they see us trying to recruit for chapters and they assume that is our methodology for just in general spreading information. Yeah,
definitely. That was something that I didn't get either until I came out here. And Cliff and Matt, Cliff is the Canada coordinator and Matt is the Vancouver coordinator, and they pretty much run the chapter here, and they do a really good job of it. And they taught me a lot about how to get these ideas out to people. Because Cliff he's a promoter, like he does promotions for different bands, and like he's good at putting together little campaigns or things like that. Like he created the One Planet Project, if you've heard of that. And just this idea that, hey, like, let's do what Greenpeace is doing. They stand on the sides of the street with a clipboard, and instead of trying to get money from people, let's just try and give them information. That's all we want to do. We stop them, say, hey, we're not asking for money. We just want to ask you a couple questions and then send you some movies on your email. And it's easy as that, and it's super easy to get 10 or 15 people in a row who maybe are a little bit intrigued by these questions you asked and might check out the information you send them, and might not, but at least you're being proactive in trying to get that information to people, and you're not asking for anything from them. You're not asking them to join the movement. You're not asking them to do anything. You're just saying, here's the information. Look at it if you want to.
So with this sort of thing in mind, would you say that there's any particular incident examples of, so for example, with your friends who, because as you say, most of your friends were already aware of the first Zeitgeist film, would you say there's any examples of any notable discussions between you and your friends who are aware of this sort of thing, or maybe even not aware, and when you've actually spoken to them about this direction, and there's been any formative understanding on either side? Would you say there's any notable examples of that with you?
I can't say that I can think of anything super specific for that. I feel like a lot of my friends just weren't really that interested in discussing it, so I would like bring up a part of the topic and they'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I'm down for that. So do you want to go get drunk and do this? You know what I mean? It's like, it kind of rolls off their back, and it's not, it didn't sort of hit them in this way that they were that, adamant about it to have any deep or real discussions, or to really, either debate me or to have a big profound realization. It was just sort of like, oh yeah, that sounds good. I think that's a good idea. The only person I remember who was my friend who actually sort of got into some debates and some conversations with me was my one friend Jack, who's the one that I'm doing the podcast with, and that was part of the reason that I wanted to do it with him, because first, he's had some experience doing sort of podcast radio shows. He actually went to school to be on the radio, and so he's a good talker. He can fill time and talk, and also because he's not afraid to disagree with me and tell me when his opinion is different and have an interesting conversation about it. Not necessarily a debate where we're just gonna, come to some standstill, but interesting talks can happen when you have differing viewpoints or just are willing to discuss different ideas. And we used to work together at the same job, and so we spent a lot of time just sort of standing around talking about a lot of different topics, basically anything you can think of. And so there was a lot of time spent with him discussing different things. So I'm again looking forward to, doing this podcast with him. But I think that's about it. Most of my communication on this front has either been by seeking out people who share the same ideas, finding my local chapters and wherever I was living, or going out and talking to people about it on the streets, setting up a booth, or I did go megaphoning once, but that's not really my thing. It's a little bit too much, putting the spotlight and all this attention right on me, and I'm too shy to do that. But it was really fun the time I did it, as nervous and terrified as I was.
Oh yeah, it can be. I mean, the first time I went megaphoning, I had this piddly little 15-watt megaphone, and it's like, not very good. But I spent about 5 minutes pacing back and forth, just like thinking to myself, right, I'll just try to G myself up to do it. But then as soon as I lifted it up to my lips and activated it, I knew, right, I'm committed now. I got to go through with it. But
I found when I was doing it,